Hey y'all, here's a question that I get a lot. Why are you focusing on behaviors and not focusing on people? Except, let's be honest, that's not how most people phrase the question. What happens a lot of times when I'm having conversations about election violence prevention is that we'll talk for a little while and then somebody in the group always says, all right, but who are you kidding? Like, why don't you just say whose fault it is? Because it's so obvious whose fault it is. And that's a really interesting phenomenon to me because humans just have this thing where we want to know who to blame and we want to talk about whose fault and we want to point fingers. But there is not, first of all, universal agreement about what is obvious. I talk with people across the country and from all different parts of the political spectrum, and they have very different opinions about whose fault is the possibility of violence. But then also, the other thing is blaming people is not effective. I'm not saying it's immoral. I'm not making a moral argument here. I'm saying it's literally ineffective if our goal is to prevent violence, because you have to be willing to talk to everybody. Most of the people in this country, no matter who they are, no matter what part of the political spectrum they belong to, they do not want violence. Most people just don't. They don't want violence as part of the election cycle. They don't want it in their communities. They don't want it in other people's communities. And it's really important to keep as many people in the room as possible. If we all work together, we're actually an enormous majority of people in this country who don't want there to be violence with the elections. So we focus on behaviors. We talk about the kinds of things that people do or don't do that make the environment around us more reactive. Think about it like high school chemistry when you talked about a catalyst for a reaction that, you drop something in a puddle of goo and it sets off this big explosion. So the catalyst is always going to exist. There's always going to be something that happens, like an initial incident of violence or somebody who says something that's just really stupid. And then the question is how everybody else is going to react to that. We're not going to successfully eliminate all of the catalysts, but we can work on the reactions. We can work on the environment and whether it is likely to react violently. We focus on behaviors and we focus on patterns and stuff that's going on in society and the way that we talk to each other, because if we're going to be really truthful and if we're really going to be effective in preventing violence, that means we have to recognize and interrupt the dangerous patterns. And we have to be able to see those in the people that we do not like, but we also have to be able to see those in people we like, and we have to be able to see those in ourselves. I have my own opinions about politics. I do. I have candidates that I prefer, but I'm not going to talk about them most of the time because they're not super relevant. And I'm also not going to make any assumptions about yours. If you do not want violence as part of this election cycle, then you're part of the team. And that's the only thing required.